Another question? Yes?
Speaking of the government and the economy, are there any kind of roadblocks that you guys are going to see that the government might send you or the state might send you so far as finances and stuff? Because I can see this as kind of like switching to solar powered cars and stuff, how people aren't ready to switch from oil to solar power, and how that might ruin some people's jobs and whatnot.
It's a really good question. And
They actually offer incentives to switch.
yeah, I think now is a great time. The new administration is encouraging alternative energy, sustainable design. There's a 30% tax incentive or credit for implementing not just solar, but any type of energy saving element within a home. There's a 50% tax credit from the state. So you have an 80% credit, which basically means you can have a $16,000 solar system for about $4,000 or $5,000. So financially, there are great incentives to begin to implement solar and alternative energy. I think the new administration is removing those kind of roadblocks and creating incentives, which is what we need. But you bring up a good point, though, about switching from a society that's dependent upon fossil fuels to alternative energy. It can't happen overnight. I'm not saying that all fossil fuels are bad or should be eliminated. And it's kind of like the analogy with a hybrid car. We see the house as kind of like a hybrid house. We understand that you still need the grid, you still need power produced by coal, unfortunately, to supplement the power that you'll receive from solar or electric. But that over time, hopefully, we can lessen our dependence on fossil fuels and move to alternative energy, because we have to. Because fossil fuels are dwindling and we can't burn all the coal that we have on this planet, or we'll destroy our atmosphere. So we have to shift away from those fossil fuels. So hybrid cars, hybrid houses are one way of beginning to transition and to not only begin to lessen our dependence, but to shift our mindset as consumers and to begin to adopt strategies like Kat was talking about. Just the simple strategies about choosing to recycle your bags at the grocery store, or using everyday bag that can be recycled. In fact, when we go to Washington, D.C., we have to produce 10,000 handouts to hand out to the public. And we wanted to come up with something that people wouldn't throw away. It would just be terrible to produce 10,000 handouts and then have them all in the trash. So we're actually producing a grocery bag with Beausoleil on it that's reusable. So everyone will walk away from our house with something they can actually reuse and promote our project. So that's just one example about just the choices you make affect how you live and the sustainability of how you live. Yes?
And I was wondering, you had mentioned the rainwater thing and how you were going to try and recycle that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have other systems in place, like the sewage and whatnot, that you guys are thinking about that recycle the water as well as sunlight?
Yes, for the competition, we're not allowed to do that, but when we come back, we have gray water collection. Gray water is the water that you wash down the sink or goes down the drain in the tub or the shower. Typically, that just goes into our sewage. But the reality is the gray water actually can be reused, and we're going to reuse it for irrigation, for plants. It has to have some filtration, but it can be used as irrigation and returned back into the ecosystem without any damage, and in fact helping the environment, versus putting additional stress on our sewage plants that we have. As far as the sewage itself, for the competition, the toilet is not connected, but when we come back here, we're looking at either doing some type of a filtration system for that. There are composting toilets, which is another step that people are starting to look at. So anything that we can do to remove those additional stresses on our infrastructure and utilize nature to help treat sewage, I think are really worth looking at. Yes?
You mentioned recyclables, and are any of your materials recyclable for the competition, or are you adding that after?
You talking about the materials in the house?
Yes.
Recyclable? As many as we can. We are thinking about that. One problem with that is that for market viability, using recycled or reclaimed materials actually does increase the cost of the home and limits its reproduction, the ability to reproduce it. So for instance, even if we got a truckload of donated wood that was from an old building that was torn down, it would benefit that single project because you were using recycled material. But if we were to build 66 Beausoleil homes, we could not use recycled materials. There wouldn't be enough available. So we had to kind of balance it. Did you understand what I'm saying? You have to use materials that are readily available, but that are also green and sustainably produced or harvested. So I think one misconception often is that wood siding is bad because you're cutting down a tree. But actually wood siding is better for the environment if it's from trees that are sustainably grown, which means it's not a clear cut. The way that trees used to be harvested is the forestry companies would come in and clear cut everything. But now what they're doing is they're selectively picking trees out, and those are the trees that they're producing, the cypress siding in our case. And so the cypress is sustainably grown, new trees are planted, new siding is produced. It's actually better for the environment than using something like PVC vinyl siding, which hurts the environment with the off-gassing that comes off of it. Or even something like hardy plank, which is a material that uses fiberglass, which ends up in people's lungs who are producing the material. So it's always a balance. You really have to look closely at the materials that you pick, not just their ability to be recycled, or if they are salvaged, but how they're produced, what happens to them in the long run, and can you produce more homes with the same materials? That's one thing.
And also I wanted to add that you had asked about recycling materials. It is a good thing. It just, for our needs, we had to sort of make those decisions. I know that there is a team that's competing that's using recycled barn wood. So I just wanted to reemphasize that using, if someone does tear down a building and you're able to resalvage those materials, it's still a good thing to do. Just for this specific application, we were also focused on other things such as market viability. Another thing, though, that we're doing, in a way, it's just as good, because in every construction project, you're going to have waste. And so when you're building, a lot of times that waste is thrown away. People don't think about resalvaging that or using it in other applications. So what we're doing is, if, for example, in that transitional porch area where it's open, our flooring in that area is called e-pay. And in every project, there's what you call a drop, and drop is waste or materials that aren't used for that specific application. So we'll have drop from our flooring when we cut the floor, but what we're going to do is use all the drop and glue ups and sand it down and oil it and varnish it, and it's going to become our butcher block in the kitchen. Also, with our cypress siding right now, we're using some of the drop from those cuts for our planters. And so you should always keep that in mind, even if you guys do get into architecture or even in your projects and whatever you go to school for, that you're going to be building something, like in our little models, we would be building something and we would have things left over, but instead of just throwing it away, you kind of hold to it for a while, and eventually you'll be able to use it for something else. And it's just that it's just what we're doing in the house. Are we that boring that you guys have to sleep? Oh, come on. Y'all better wake up back there.